All right, listener, you sent us some really interesting stuff on gold IRAs, so we're going to take a deep dive into how these precious metal-backed accounts could fit into retirement funding and maybe even help with those country club memberships.
It's an interesting area for sure.
Yeah. When I think about retirement, I sometimes wonder if stocks and bonds are really going to be enough, especially with how inflation has been and how unpredictable the markets are these days.
It's a common concern a lot of people share. You're right. If you only rely on those traditional assets, it can be risky. That's why diversifying your portfolio is so important, and that's where gold comes in. It's increasingly being seen as a way to add some stability to the mix and hedge against those risks you mentioned.
Okay, I get that, but why gold? Isn't it a little, I don't know, old-fashioned?
That's a common misconception. Gold has been a store of value for centuries because it's a tangible and finite resource. Unlike currencies, which can be printed by governments, the supply of gold is limited. And that scarcity is what underpins its value and helps it hold up, even thrive sometimes, when other assets are struggling.
I see what you mean. So it's like a safety net when things get a little shaky in the financial world.
Yeah.
But how does that actually translate to retirement planning?
Okay, think about it this way. During times of high inflation, your purchasing power decreases. The money you've saved buys less and less, but historically, gold has held its value during those inflationary periods. Sometimes it even outperforms other assets. So if you include gold in your portfolio, you're basically adding a layer of protection against that erosion of purchasing power, which can be especially important during retirement when you're on a fixed income.
That makes sense. So it's not about striking it rich with gold, but about holding on to the wealth you've built. But how does a gold IRA actually work? Is it literally a treasure chest of gold stashed away somewhere?
Not quite, although that would be fun to see. It's a bit more sophisticated than that. A gold IRA is similar to a traditional IRA, except instead of holding paper assets, it holds physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium. It's managed by a custodian, which is a specialized financial institution, and the metals are stored securely in an IRS-approved depository.
So it's like a traditional IRA, but with a precious metals twist. But wouldn't it be easier to just buy gold directly and, I don't know, keep it in a safe at home?
You could definitely do that, but a gold IRA has some distinct advantages, especially for retirement. The biggest one is the tax treatment. With a gold IRA, your investments grow tax-deferred, just like a traditional IRA. That means you don't pay taxes on any gains until you withdraw the funds during retirement, which could potentially help your savings grow faster.
That's a pretty big plus. Are there any other reasons why someone might choose a gold IRA over a traditional IRA filled with stocks and bonds?
Remember how we talked about diversification? Well, gold IRAs are a really effective way to achieve that. By putting a portion of your retirement savings into gold, you're adding an asset that historically has performed differently than traditional investments. This can help lower your overall portfolio risk, especially during market downturns.
So it's like a counterbalance. When the stock market takes a hit, gold might be able to soften the blow.
Exactly. Gold's inherent value and the fact that it tends to move independently of stocks and bonds make it a valuable diversification tool. So for retirees who are really concerned about protecting their savings, a gold IRA can offer a level of security that's hard to find elsewhere.
Okay, I'm starting to see why people are interested.
Ugh.
But let's be real, there has to be a downside, right? Nothing's perfect when it comes to investments.
You're right, no investment is completely risk-free. Even though gold has a long history of stability, its price can fluctuate in the short term. And there are other things to consider, like storage fees that come with holding physical gold.
So you can't just buy it and forget about
Yeah.
it. There are costs involved and the price can go up and down. What about scams?
Yeah.
We hear a lot about those in the precious metals world.
That's an important point. One misconception is that gold IRAs are really complicated and hard to set up, which can lead some people to fall for companies that promise to handle everything, but charge a lot of money. In reality, setting up a gold IRA is pretty straightforward. It's a lot like opening a traditional IRA. You just need to choose a reputable custodian and a trustworthy dealer to buy your metals. And there are a lot of institutions that specialize in gold IRAs and can guide you through the process.
So it's not as difficult as some might make it seem. But with all these companies out there, how can you tell the good ones from the scammers? What should people look for in a gold IRA provider?
That's a great question. First, look for experience and a strong track record in the precious metals industry. Look at customer reviews and ratings. Transparency is really important too. Make sure the provider is upfront about all their fees, including setup, storage, and any other potential costs. If you see hidden fees, that's a big red flag.
So reputation, transparency, what else?
Making sure they comply with IRS regulations is non-negotiable. You can check this pretty easily on the IRS website. And finally, you want excellent customer service. You want a provider who's responsive to your questions, gives clear explanations, and makes you feel comfortable throughout the process.
It sounds a lot like choosing any financial service provider. Do your research, read the fine print, and go with a company you trust.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that gold is just one asset class. It should be a part of a diversified portfolio that's designed for your individual needs and risk tolerance. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
So it's not about putting all your eggs in the gold basket, but rather about adding it to the mix strategically.
Precisely. Gold isn't a magic bullet, and it's not right for everyone. It's crucial to talk to a qualified financial advisor to figure out if a gold IRA aligns with your financial goals, risk tolerance, and overall investment strategy.
Got it. So while gold can be a valuable asset, it's important to get professional advice to see if it's right for you and to develop a personalized investment plan. Let's look at how this plays out in real life. Do you have any examples of how gold IRAs are being used to fund retirement expenses?
Definitely. One example from the material you provided is about a retired couple, John and Mary. They were worried about market volatility and how inflation would impact their savings. They decided to put 30% of their assets into a gold IRA.
Interesting. So they were trying to add stability to their portfolio. Did that work out for them?
By including gold, John and Mary were able to reduce their exposure to those market swings and protect their purchasing power. It gave them peace of mind knowing that a portion of their savings was less vulnerable to the ups and downs of the stock market.
That's reassuring. It really shows how a gold IRA can provide a sense of security, especially when things are uncertain. Do you have other examples of how people are using gold IRAs to fund their retirement lifestyle?
There's another case about Susan, a retiree who wanted to make sure she could keep up her country club membership throughout retirement.
No, that's a retirement goal I can get behind.
Oh.
How did Susan use her gold IRA to cover those country club costs?
Susan set up a systematic distribution plan from her gold IRA. This way, she could get regular withdrawals without having to sell her precious metals.
So she created a steady income stream from her gold IRA to cover those ongoing expenses. That's a great example of how gold IRAs can be used not just for long-term wealth preservation, but also for specific lifestyle needs during retirement.
Exactly. Now let's move on to some of the questions you might have about gold IRAs, starting with the tax advantages.
Right, taxes are always on our minds, especially when it comes to retirement planning. So can you remind us what makes gold IRAs so tax-friendly?
Sure. With a gold IRA, your investments grow tax-deferred, just like a traditional IRA. You won't owe any taxes on those gains until you start taking withdrawals in retirement. This can really help your savings grow more efficiently over time. And when you do eventually take those withdrawals, they're taxed at your income tax rate at that time, which for most people is lower than during their working years.
So you're basically delaying the tax hit until later when you might be in a lower tax bracket. Smart. What else do people usually want to know about?
A lot of people ask about how much gold you can actually have in a gold IRA.
Yeah, is there a limit? Do you need like a vault the size of Fort Knox?
Not at all. While there's no specific dollar limit on contributions, you can hold up to 100% of your IRA assets in precious metals. Of course, as with any investment, you should talk to a financial advisor to figure out the best allocation for your situation.
So you can adjust the amount of gold you hold based on your needs and risk tolerance. Makes sense. What other questions come up frequently?
Safety and security are always top of mind.
Yeah.
After all, we're talking about precious metals here.
For sure, no one wants to lose their gold nest egg. How are these assets protected?
With a gold IRA, your precious metals are kept in a super secure IRS-approved depository. These facilities are like Fort Knox. They're designed to safeguard valuable assets and have tons of security measures. We're talking multiple layers of protection, both physical and electronic, 24/7 monitoring, insurance coverage, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, that sounds incredibly secure. So peace of mind is a big factor with gold IRAs. What else do people ask about?
Another common question is whether you can actually use your gold IRA to pay for your living expenses during retirement. Can you really tap into those gold holdings for everyday things?
It's the golden question, right?
Yeah.
Can you turn those gold bars into spending money?
Absolutely. You can. Just like a traditional IRA, you can set up a distribution plan to take money out of your gold IRA.
So if you need to cover those country club dues, travel expenses, or just your daily bills, your gold IRA could be an income source during retirement.
That's right. And there's flexibility in how you set up those distributions. You can choose regular payments, lump sum withdrawals, or even a mix of both.
So retirees have a good amount of control over how they access their savings.
Yeah.
Okay, last question that often pops up. How do you actually fund a gold IRA? Do you have to go panning for gold yourself?
I wish it were that adventurous.
Huh.
There are two main ways to fund a gold IRA. You can roll over funds from an existing IRA or 401k into a gold IRA, or you can make direct contributions just like you would with a traditional IRA.
Got it. So you can either move existing retirement funds into a gold IRA or start fresh with new contributions. Makes sense. So we've talked about a lot how gold IRAs work, the potential benefits, the importance of picking a good provider.
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways our listeners should remember?
Definitely do your research. Look into potential gold IRA providers really thoroughly. Make sure they have a good track record, are transparent about their fees, and are fully compliant with all the IRS rules. Don't get pressured into anything or fall for promises that sound too good to be true.
Always solid advice.
Uh,
Anything else?
Most importantly, talk to a qualified financial advisor. They can help you figure out if a gold IRA fits into your overall financial goals, risk tolerance, and investment strategy. Remember, gold is just one piece of the puzzle, and a professional can help you create a plan that works for you.
Excellent advice. Now, before we wrap up, I have to ask, what about gold in this increasingly digital world? With cryptocurrencies, NFTs, and all that, does gold still hold its own as a safe haven asset?
That's a really interesting question, and there's a lot of debate about it right now. Some people think gold is becoming less relevant as we move towards a more digital economy. Others argue that because it has intrinsic value and this long history, it will always be a desirable asset.
So it's the old versus the new gold with its long history versus all these new digital assets.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see how things evolve. Will gold stay a safe haven, or will it be overshadowed by something else? Only time will tell.
That's a great point. The world of finance is always changing. So listener, what are your thoughts? After this deep dive into the world of gold IRAs, are you seeing them as a potentially valuable part of your retirement plan? Or are you still on the fence?
This deep dive has given you a lot to think about when it comes to gold IRAs and their role in planning for a secure financial future. Remember, everyone's situation is unique, so do your research and talk to a professional before making any decisions.
Exactly. It's all about finding what's right for you. And if you're feeling curious, there's a ton of information out there for you to explore.
So keep learning, asking questions, and building a financial future that's as bright as gold.
I like that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into gold IRAs. Yeah, it really is fascinating to think about, old versus new. I have to admit, I'm starting to see these gold IRAs a little differently now. It's not just about nostalgia. Maybe it's a way to kind of connect traditional finance with this whole new digital world we're moving into.
It is an interesting perspective, and it makes you think about, how we define value as the financial world changes. Is it about tangible assets like gold, or is it digital tokens? Or maybe it's both.
Maybe it's all about finding that balance. But I'm curious what else stood out to you from the research you did on gold IRAs.
Aside from those big questions, there's a lot of smaller details that are really important for anyone who's thinking about a gold IRA. For example, did you know that not all gold is the same when it comes to IRAs?
Really? I thought gold was just gold. What's the difference?
Well, the IRS has specific requirements for the type of gold that can be held in a gold IRA. It has to meet certain standards for purity and be in a form that's allowed, like approved coins or bars.
So you can't just put any random gold trinket in your IRA. There are rules.
Yeah,
Interesting.
exactly. And that's why it's so important to choose a provider that you can trust and who really knows what they're doing. They can help you understand all the details and make sure you're investing in gold that meets the IRS rules. Otherwise, you could end up with penalties or even have your IRA disqualified.
Good point. It really emphasizes why you need to do your research and not just jump into a gold IRA without knowing all the ins and outs.
That's right. And speaking of details, another thing I found really interesting is the different options for storing the gold in your IRA.
Oh yeah, we talked about security earlier, but what are the actual ways you can store the gold?
You have a couple of choices. You can go with a traditional depository, which is basically a super secure vault specifically for precious metals. These facilities are really high-tech with lots of security measures and insurance in case of theft or damage.
So like a fortress for your gold? Sounds pretty safe. What are the other options?
Some providers offer what they call home storage for gold. That means you can physically keep the gold you own in your IRA at home in a safe place.
Wow, so you could actually have the gold in your house.
Hmm.
But isn't that risky security-wise?
There are definitely trade-offs. With home storage, you have direct access to your gold, but it comes with more responsibility. You have to make sure it's insured and protected, and you have to follow some specific IRS rules to keep the tax benefits of your IRA.
So it's not a decision to make lightly. You'd have to think carefully about the pros and cons. It sounds like there's a lot more to gold IRAs than meets the eye.
Absolutely. It's not as simple as just buying some gold. There are these nuances and regulations and storage options that you need to understand. It's about aligning it all with your retirement goals.
So listener, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's the takeaway. Gold IRAs can be a really interesting and potentially valuable part of your retirement plan, but they're not a solution for everyone. They require research due diligence and thinking about your individual needs and how much risk you're comfortable with.
Right. And remember, we've just scratched the surface. There's tons of information out there, articles, research papers, expert opinions that you can explore. So if this deep dive has made you curious, keep researching and maybe even talk to a financial advisor to see if a gold IRA is right for you.
Absolutely. We're just giving you a starting point, a little push to start your own financial journey. And who knows, maybe in a future deep dive, we'll circle back to this topic and look at those new digital frontiers like cryptocurrencies and NFTs and how they might connect with traditional assets like gold.
Yeah, the future of finance is always changing, and we'll be here to help you understand it.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into gold